I call the member for Corangamite.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's my great pleasure to rise and speak on this MPI. And the member for Oxley speaks about Libby Coker, who is currently a councillor with Surf Coast Shire. I've never seen a more pathetic, hopeless representative as a councillor than Libby Coker. She can't even stand up for the people of Anglesey. She had an idea to create the Messmate track bypass, which has been comprehensively rejected by the people of Anglesey. She had this great idea to destroy the Anglesey bike park. 5,500 people signed a petition supporting that bike park. She had no plan to fund an alternate location, and nor did she have any funding. And she's now had to crawl back from her position. She has been a weak and pathetic councillor and would make a terrible member for Corangamite, who does not have the guts to stand up even for the community she represents in Anglesey, let alone for Corangamite. And today and every single day I will continue to hold those to account who fail the people of Corangamite, let me tell you, like Alcoa, who botched the demolition of the power station, which has got asbestos in it, as far as we know, and she has not said a thing. So the member for Oxley has made a pretty big error in raising Libby Coker's track record, because I can tell you the people for Anglesey think it's absolutely pathetic. And he talks about a second-generation politician, and yes, very proudly, my mother was a politician. I want to place on the record that my mother did a lot of other great things in the community. She worked as a secretary, she ran Legacy, she established DoCare, she worked for DoCare, she worked in a dress shop, she ran her own business making sandwiches, and she raised a family. Like most hard-working Australians, many of us work very hard to make sure our kids have a great future, and my mother did that, and I'm incredibly proud of what she did for our family and what she did and the contribution she made to the Geelong community. There's one thing, of course, for certain with this dishevelled and unprincipled opposition: lies and taxes. And lies and taxes directed at the most vulnerable of Australians. There was no bigger lie than Labor's Mediscare campaign, a big, fat lie directed to senior Australians to scare them and to make them fear about their future. This was the most disgraceful lie, a deliberate, deceptive, disgraceful campaign. And Australians, I'm very pleased to see, will be protected from this deliberately deceptive behaviour because of the legislation that we have now passed. And now what are we seeing from Labor? A plan to deliver more than $200 billion of taxes. And Australians don't need campaign videos to know what this mob is all about. The biggest slug is on retirees. $5 billion a year, including some pensioners, self-funded retirees, many of whom are just sitting above the pensioner threshold. 900,000 of the most vulnerable Australians under attack by Labor. What hypocrites are members opposite? They're quite happy to provide the tax deduction to high-income earners from franked dividends, but if you are a low-income earner and you rely on the cash refund from the ATO to pay bills and to put food on the table, then Labor says tough. Labor says tough. Don't worry about it. Labor knows, Mr Deputy Speaker, they are in huge problems with this policy, because they know that this policy, more than any other, attacks the most vulnerable of Australians. A $57 billion tax slug over 10 years, and of course Labor, as we know now, can't even get its costings right. Aspiration is not about having your life savings ripped out from under you, which is what Labor is all about. Consider what we've seen from Labor's plan to attack businesses. Let's not forget that a few years ago Labor supported lower company tax rates because the Leader of the Opposition and others argued that this was good for business and good for jobs and investment. Now, in an unprincipled reversal of that position, we have seen Labor declare a war on business, and they were the Leader of the Opposition's very own words. But this pathetic and weak Labor Party is so unprincipled, it can't stand up for Australia's coal workers, and of course it's now planning to drive jobs offshore. by this terrible, terrible policy, including the $70 billion
Thank
it's
the member. The
penalising
member's time has
Australians.
expired. And I